Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today got a leveling guide for you. It's a 1 to 75 Death Seal Lich that uses Hungering Souls and Death Wave to do a bunch of necrotic damage. And this one is based around using a few different uniques during the leveling process that you may have found, such as the Staff of Perseverance that gives you a chance for extra projectiles with Hungering Souls. And we leveled this one up a little bit different than last time, and my last 1 to 75 video for some reason froze halfway through. Even though the volume kept going, the video paused. So we're redoing that guide, and on top of that, this one's going to be feeling a lot better leveling up because we're doing the extra projectiles with Hungering Souls. It's much easier to clear AoE, especially until you get to the end game. So this one went much smoother, much faster, and at the end game you do tons of damage once again. And the final unique we'll use is the Maruna's Staff, the one-handed staff at level 78 that you can use, and it does a ton of necrotic damage. It also places a damned stack on you every time that you cast a spell, and those damned stacks make you do more damage with both Possess from Hungering Souls, and on top of that, also more damage with the actual Death Wave coming from Death Seal. So you're actually just doing tons and tons of damage, and it comes together relatively early, and it's quite easy to scale it, and it does have a very large ceiling in the end game, so you can continue to expand on this one without having to transition to anything else. Now, just like all the other leveling guides, I will break this down at certain points. I'll put all my passives and all my skill points in, and then show you my inventory and show you exactly what I have. This character does use some leveling uniques. Now, those uniques were farmed on the Auto Bomber, and then once we found them, we went and made this character. If you haven't seen the Auto Bomber, that was our first solo self-found character of the account, and it made it possible to farm many of the uniques that we needed. Once we found them, we can just speed run level all of these alts. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alright travelers, we are now level 4 with our beginning of our leveling of Lich, or our Acolyte that will become a Lich, and this will be based on Death Seal, Death Wave, and of course using Hungering Souls, and in the end game we'll be getting a bunch of damn stacks applied on ourselves and basing it around that. We currently don't have any extra resistance. We do have some dodge for skills. We're going to spec into our first skill, which will be the Summon Skeleton. Right now you can have 3 max, we're just going to keep it there, but we want to be able to summon all 3 of them at once, so once we have the Hungering Souls, you get additional damage based on having 3 max summon skeletons, or at least having 3 minions total active, exactly 3. So we're going to have it to where we can do a 1 cast for that. So the first point into Necrotic Conviction, just to give them a little bit more damage or health, depending on if it's a warrior or archer. Then for passives, we have 2 points. We're going to go ahead and build into the Blood Aura for our damage and minion damage at this point. Eventually, we'll respec, as we're going to be doing just our damage. We won't be using minions for damage in the end game. And then for the inventory, our starter uniques, we have 2 Arboreal Circuits on. We have a Falcon. We have the Close Call to give us some extra dodge rating for every time we've blocked a recent attack. And then on top of that, we'll be putting on the Viper Tail and the Reach of the Grave. And then at level 20, the Curse of Perseverance, which should give us some extra damage with our Hungering Souls, as well as a lot of extra projectiles to help with some AoE. And that'll be it for the level 4 update. I'll see you guys at level 8. Alright, travelers, we are now level 8, which means we get to spec into our second specialization slot, into our second skill. We have some resistance started, we got some physical. Physical and void is kind of the main thing that you want to look for right now. We also have a little bit of fire and a little bit of lightning and a ton of dodge and a little bit of armor. Most of that's coming from the uniques that we're wearing, as we do have the leveling uniques on. For skills, got 2 more points for Summon Skeleton. Gonna go ahead and throw 1 more in Necrotic Conviction and then 1 point in Marrow Tap. And then for the next skill, it's going to be Hungering Souls. But first, we got to put in some passive points. All 5 are going to go into Blood Aura to increase the damage we do and the minions are doing. Right now, we're doing sub-minion damage. We'll end up re-speccing these later in the game, but for now, they work quite well. So back to skills, 1 point for Hungering Souls. And the first thing that we want to do with this is we want to get the Ravenous. We want that spell necrotic hit damage. This is going to give us a ton of hit damage. As soon as we get 3 points there, we're going to work down 1 point in Grave Bond and then put in points for the Unholy Trinity. Since we already have the 3 minions, this will give us that 150% more hit damage, and with a good base of spell necrotic damage, we'll be doing tons of damage. We're not going to go solo. We're not going to be limited to 1 yet. We'll do that at the very end game. For now, we're just going to see how much we can clear with a ton of them coming out, especially once we hit level 20. And then for items, all the same ones. We have the Reach of the Grave on, Close Call, Viper Tail, 2 Arboreal Circuits, and the Falcon. And then again, like I said, at level 20, we're going for the Curse of Perseverance, which will give us a chance for all those extra skills, as well as give us +1 to necrotic spells, necrotic damage, and should do a little bit of damage for us, as well as give us quite a bit of Leech, which will be really nice, and a ton of health. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 13 for the next one. Alright, travelers, we are now level 13. We're still getting some more elemental resist. We got a little bit of void, still working on the physical. 30% dodge. We're still wearing the same unique, same amount of dodge from them. A little bit of armor. And then for damage, not much, but we do have some damage over time, which affects the possess. And then we have, of course, our necrotic damage, about 42%, to do a little extra damage with the Hungering Souls. For minions, they have no extra life, but they do have about 150% spell damage and 50 to 60% Rhaegar damage, and that's going to affect both the bowmen and then the mages, but we don't have the mages yet. But for the melee, they all have about 60% damage. That's from the Reach of the Grave. For skills, we got 2 more points for the Summon Skeleton. We're going to put both of them in Empty the Grave so that we will summon all 3 of them at the same time. For Hungering Souls, 3 more points, 2 of them into Ravenous for 12 more spell necrotic hit damage, and then 1 point in Grave Bond. And the next point is going to give us a huge bonus to damage, so that's going to be huge once we have that. For passives, we got 6 more points. We're going to cap out the Blood Aura, and then we're going to start building into Soul and Vitality just to give ourselves some more survivability along with the minions, so the rest of our points will go there. And for the inventory, the Reach of the Grave is still on. We still have Avarice for a little more elemental resist, both Arboreal Circuits, still the Viper, Falcon, and the Close Call. And then for an amulet, we got some mana regen on that, which was pretty nice. And again, at level 20, we'll be switching to a 2-handed staff for that necrotic damage. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 20. Alright, travelers, we are now level 20 for our resistance, some elemental, some fizz, some void. We have about 28% dodge, 14% armor, but that's about it for all of our defense. And then for skills, we're going to go ahead and spec 3 more points into summon skeleton. We're going to go ahead and put 1 more point in necrotic conviction, or I mean all 3 points in necrotic conviction. And then for hungering souls, we have 3 points, all 3 going into unholy trinity for that 150% more damage. We can now wear the curse of perseverance, which gives us +1 skills to hungering souls. So we're going to throw another point into ravenous. And then for our third skill to spec into, you have some options. You could do Wandering Spirits, you could do Summon Volatile Zombie, but in this case we're going to go ahead and go with Transplant so we can use it for some mana back. So for Transplant, we're going to go ahead and put 1 point into the first node, Acolyte's Fervor, and then we're going to put 2 points into Sadism, which I'm going to accidentally click an extra point. I'm going to take that out and then put it into Pale Blood. That'll be where the third point goes so that we can start getting back 10 mana every time that we transplant. Shall help offset the cost of proccing Hungering Souls all of the time because we're manually casting it. For passives, we're going to cap out Stolen Vitality. We have 6 more points, but we only want to spend 4 of them. We only need 20 here before we can start putting into the Lich, which we're going to save for the Mastery. So we're going to put 4 more into Forbidden Knowledge, and that'll make us done with this tree. And then for our inventory, we're going to go ahead and keep wearing a lot of the same uniques that we have, such as the Falcon, the Arboreal Circuit, Avarice Gloves, and then of course we have the two-handed staff on now, the Curse of Perseverance for those hungering souls, hopefully some extra projectiles, so that we can clear the map a lot quicker. And that'll be it for this update. I will see you guys at level 25 when we master. Alright, travelers, we are now level 24. Time to choose our mastery. We've got just over 450 health. We're still working on our resistance. We've got some necrotic, some physical, some elemental. We've got some armor, a little bit of dodge. And then for our damage, we have about 50% increased spell damage and necrotic damage and all of that. So that will do some extra damage with the Hungering Souls. But that sums up the character sheet. For our mastery, we are going to go ahead and choose the Lich. This will give us 1% of damage dealt leached as health, and also spells and melee attacks deal increased damage equal to our missing health. So once we get Death Seal and automatically make us low life, and we're sealed into that, we will get even more increased damage due to that, which will be really nice. So we're going to go ahead and choose that mastery, which does give us access to the Reaper form, which will be nice. For skills, we got 3 more points for transplant, but we're going to respec it, and this is where we're going to spec into Reaper form so we can start moving, get some extra damage. So we're going to go ahead and put 2 points in Mistress of Decay, and then we're going to put in 1 point into Harbinger of Death, and then 1 point in Soul for a soul. And then later we're going to want more of that health leech. We're also going to want the spell damage from Reaper's Ascendance, more of the damage from both Reaper's Curse and Soul for a Soul and Death's Door. Then for Hungering Souls, we got 2 more points. We're going to cap out the Ravenous with 1 more point, and then we're going to build into Necrotic Pact, which gives us 2 less projectiles, but we do get another base 5 necrotic damage, which is nice. Later we'll build into Grave Bond and some more damage, and eventually we'll go with Isolation for that 100% increased hit damage size, but you will be limited to 1 Hungering Soul at a time. Then for Summon Skeleton, we got 1 more point. We're going to go ahead and throw it into Marrow Tap just for some more increased leech for them to try and increase their survivability a little bit, even though they're not doing much damage. For passives, we got 6 Survival of the Cruel, so we gain more health, or we have more health, and we'll have spell damage leech as health, which will be really nice for our survivability. We're going to be leeching a ton of the necrotic damage that we do, and the dot damage that we do. And then for our inventory, nothing has changed here. We are going to be working on a new chest,
And we could also at this point get rid of the Viper Tail if we wanted and get into something that gives us a lot more health. We want to basically stack as much health and work on getting our resistance up at this point. And we'll probably end up taking off one of the Arbor Circuits. That's it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 35 when we spec into our 4th skill, which will be Transplant again. Alright, travelers, we are now level 35. It's time for a new weapon and our 4th skill to spec into. We've got some necrotic risks still from the passives, some void, physical, and elemental. We haven't done too much crafting or anything with our gear. We did change some of our uniques around, so we did lose a bunch of the dodge rating that we had. And then for our damage types, we have a bunch of necrotic damage, and we also have a lot of spell damage. We're also going to do some spell critical strike chance, and all of that is so that we can try and crit with the Hungering Souls, which is our main damage that we're going to be doing right now. For skills, we got 3 more points for Summon Skeleton. We're going to go ahead and put them all into the Health Leech, so they'll have a chance to leech more. The next thing we're going to be building into is getting mana back when they die. And then for Hungering Souls, we got 2 more points. We're going to go ahead and build both of them into Grave Bonds, so it'll do more damage. We're going to be taking the Solo last, that'll be more towards the end game. For Reperform, 7 more points. We're going to throw 2 more in Harbinger of Blood, and then 1 point in Reaper's Ascendance, 3 more in Soul for a Soul, and 1 point in Reaper's Curse. And then for our 4th skill, if you go to your passives, you'll see we have 15 passive points, which is not going to be enough to unlock Death Seal, so we won't be able to run it yet. But for our points, we're going to cap out the Survival of the Cruel. Then we're going to go with Dance with Death for more damage while we are at low life, or more damage overall, but tripled when at low life. And then you can build into almost anything that you want. I'm going to go with some Vitality for more life. Some of the main things we want is the increased damage when you're, for the increased strain. You'll get more intelligence. And then up here we get the spell necrotic damage, which will be huge later on. But for now, we're just going to go with Apocrypha for the intelligence. So some points there. So we'll build into that, some Vitality, then the spell necrotic damage. Then back to the skills. For the 4th skill, you can do anything that you want right here. So we're waiting to get Death Seal at level 30. As soon as we have access to that, we're going to go ahead and respec whatever skill we put in here. But I'm going to go back with Transplant again. And then again, 1 point in Acolyte's Fervor, 2 points in Sadism, and the other 2 points in Pale Blood. So we can get that mana when we do use it. Of course, the cooldown for this will compete with the cooldown for Reperform. So if you're reaping around, you're not going to be able to use Transplant. And then for the inventory, we went with a Gate Staff, which unlocks at level 35. So we went ahead and gambled for one of these, put some necrotic damage on it, and spell necrotic damage. And we'll continue to use that. We're going to swap out the Avarice and the Viper Tail here pretty soon. And we're still looking for a ring that's got some nice resistance or health on it. Also with spell damage or necrotic damage on it would be nice. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 43. Alright, travelers, we are now level 42, and we have enough passive points to get Death Seal. So, for the character sheet, we've got almost 900 health. We're still working on our resist. We've got some physical, some necrotic, that's from the passives, some void, and a little bit of elemental with a little bit of armor. For damage, we're mostly building into damage over time and spell damage at the moment. The increased damage over time that you can get with a two-handed staff at level 40, the composite staff makes the Possess from Hungering Souls do a ton of damage and will help you fly through the campaign even faster. For skills, we're going to be unspecking Transplant so that we can throw in Death Seal. We're going to throw in our Passives Force just to unlock it. We're going to throw 5 points in Apocrypha. That's going to give us some more intelligence, which will give us more damage, and we'll have increased mana regen so that we can spam even more Hungering Souls. Then we're going to put 4 points in Unclosing Wounds. This will give us more damage, but we will decay a percentage of our health every second. And then we're going to start building into Necrotic Energy for that spell Necrotic damage, which will help Death Seal damage and the Hungering Soul damage. So the last point goes there, and the next 9 points will go straight into that. Then back to skills, we got 2 more points for Summon Skeleton. We're going to start building into the Unbound Necromancy for the mana efficiency to make it a little cheaper, and then we're going to get the mana back when they die. For Hungering Souls, we have 2 more points. Since we are going to start proccing it with Hungering Souls, I'm going to go ahead and put 1 point in Isolation. This is going to limit us to only doing 1 at a time instead of the 3 that we have been doing, but it's going to do 100% more damage. And then on top of that, we're going to build into the Piercing Glaze so that we can have a higher chance to crit with it. And then lastly, we'll start building into more hit damage, a little bit more base crit, and then of course the other 1 point in Grave Bond for that 15% more damage. For Reaper form, 3 more points. We're going to cap out the Health Leech. We're going to cap out the Health Drain, and this increases our damage over time, which is nice for Possess. And then all the rest of our points will continue into the Reaper's Curse, and then at low life we'll have Death's Door. For the 4th skill, we're going to go ahead and spec into Death Seal. You have 6 points, which is just enough for Mortal Pulse, which is a second thing that we're going to go into. We're going to get the Hungering Souls firing first, and then we're going to build into the Death Wave for AoE. So 2 points in Moratorium, 1 point in Devouring Release, and then 3 points in Corrupted Consciousness, which gives us increased damage per 3% missing life, which is really nice. So basically, for the 3-to-3 ratio we have here, if we're missing 70% life, we'll have 70% increased damage, which is really nice. Once we get Mortal Pulse, we'll have that Death Wave every second. Your AoE will be very nice, and you'll just start clearing maps super quick, but that'll be on the next update at level 50. And then for gear, we still have the Avarice on. We still have 2 Arbor Circuits on, but we're going to be replacing those soon. And then we're just building into resistance, damage over time, spell damage, necrotic damage, some minion health so your skeletons don't die. And then, of course, like I said, we have the composite staff, which has the implicit damage over time as well as increased damage over time on it. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 50 for the next one. Alright, travelers, we are now level 50. Time for an update. We have just over 1,000 health. We're still working on resistances, but we haven't crafted very much gear. About 11% armor for damage. We don't care about damage over time anymore at this point. We want as much necrotic and as spell damage as possible. It's going to be the hit damage of Hungering Souls and Death Wave that's going to be doing all of the damage for us. For skills, we got one more point for Summon Skeleton. Going to throw it into Soul Catcher, so we gain Ward when one of them dies. That won't really matter too much, because if Death Seal is active, we can't have Ward, but we really want this mana back every time one of them dies. Then for Hungering Souls, we got one more point. We're going to go ahead and put this one into Great Soul, which increases the mana cost a little bit, but it does make it hit 25% harder, and that first point is going to be a straight up multiplier, so we want to throw that in there. And then we also want some more base crit, and again, we will max out the Grave Bond, but that's where our final points will go. We'll split them up between these 3 points, or those 3 nodes. For Reaper Form, we got one more point. We're going to throw it into Reaper's Curse. For Death Seal, I already used 4 more points. I put 3 more in Corrupted Consciousness to unlock the Mortal Pulse, so we put 1 point in there. Now we've got 5 points left. I'm going to go ahead and throw 4 of them into Insatiable Soul, and then 1 point into Moratorium so that our duration is maxed out. And at this point, there's 2 things that you can do. You can either make it to where you're automatically low life so that you get the damage increase, or in our case, we're going to be applying a lot of stacks of damned at endgame, so we want to build into the Doom Call. So we'll be putting a point into Soul Stability, 1 point into the Quick and the Dead, and then 3 points into Doom Call, and hopefully we can get a tier 5 Death Seal or level of Death Seal at some point, and we'll be able to put that on, and that will allow us to get 5 stacks here. And the reason for that is because this will apply damned on us, and we get more damage per stack of damned on us, but then we'll also be getting it from the weapon we plan on using at level 78 that gives us a stack of damned on ourselves for every spell that we cast. So there's going to be a way to get a lot of multiplicative damage out of that Death Seal and Death Wave, and it'll also increase the possessed damage of Hungering Souls. For our last skill, we're going to go ahead and spec into Aura of Decay, and for it, we're going to have it do Armor Shred instead of Poison. We're also going to have it heal us, so we're going to put 1 point in Undertow, 3 points in Corrosive Aura, and then 1 point in Decryptify so that it shreds armor instead of shredding or giving us poison chance on ourselves. And then we're going to put 2 points in Absence of Life, so the more life we're missing, the more we'll be healed every second, and that scales with healing effectiveness, and that's what we'll be using for it to try and keep our life as full as possible. We got 8 points. We're going to put them all into the Lich Mastery, and all 8 of them are going into Necrotic Energy for that spell necrotic damage, which is going to help both the Death Seal, the Death Wave, and the Hungering Souls do more damage. And then for items, we are wearing the Bastion of Honor now that we are level 50. Again, these 2 rings, you can use them if you want. We're going to be swapping them out as soon as we find something better to craft on. The Avarice is basically useless for us at this point. And then once we hit level 78, we will be wearing the Marina's Lost Soul that comes with a ton of spell necrotic damage for a one-hander, a lot of increased spell damage, increased cast speed, and then it's that damned every time that you cast the spell, which is going to be huge for us because that's going to increase the damage of the Death Wave inside of Death Seal. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 55. Alright, travelers, we are now level 55. We've got almost 1300 health. Still working on resistance. We have a little bit more physical and elemental, but still working on it. Our armor is negative right now due to the armor shreds that are applied by the Ore of Decay, but that's fine. We're still not dying, but we do have that 100% block chance against all nearby enemies thanks to the Bastion of Honor, which gives us that extra 37% damage reduction, and we will be building into block effectiveness a bit to try and get that to about 50%. For skills, we got one more point for Summon Skeleton. Going to start getting the mana back every time one of them dies. For Hungering Souls, we got one more point. Going to build into some more of the base crit chance so that we can try and get that as close as possible to 100% crit. For Reaper Form, one more point going into Reaper's Cursed. For Death Seal, we're going to go ahead and put 1 point into Soul Stability as we start to build down into the Doom Call. And then for Ore of Decay, 2 more points in Absence of Life so that we heal even more. 4 points in Inoculation, so we take less poison damage. And then we're going to go ahead and do Loathing to try and mark attackers. Anything that hits us will have a chance to have the Mark of Death on them, which will reduce the resistance by 25%, allowing us to do 25% more damage against them. So 2 points there. Then for passives, we got 5 more points. We're putting 1 point in Necrotic Energy, and we're going to start building into Ageless Ascetic for the cast speed, the increased move speed, and then so we also leech more. After we cap this, we're going to want to cap out Soul Maul as well. We want all of that damage leeched as health first, because it's really going to help us and our survivability. Then we'll come back down and start increasing our damage even more. And then in the inventory, we still have 1 Arbor Circuit on. We still have the Avarice, still looking for a new pair of gloves, something with health on it or hybrid health, along with cast speed and int. And then, of course, we will be wearing the Bastion of Honor all the way through the end game. And then still waiting for that level 78 to throw on the Marina's Lost Soul. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 65. Alright, travelers, we are now level 65. We have just over 1500 health. We've got some physical resist, cap, necrotic, a little bit of void. Still working on elemental and poison. We're still sitting at a little bit of negative armor due to the armor shred that's applied by the Ore of Decay. And then for damage types, we got about 300% spell damage and just over 200% necrotic damage. For defense, we only have 16% critical strike avoidance. We're going to continue to build into that, and of course we'll get the endurance at some point as well. That's the next thing that we're looking for. For skills, we got 2 more points for Summon Skeleton. Going to go ahead and put both in Mind Catcher so that we gain back that mana. The next thing that we'll want to build into is that we get global increased spell damage if one of our skeletons has died recently. On top of that, for Hungering Souls, we got 2 more points. We're going to go ahead and go with a little more base crit, and then we're going to go with another point in Great Soul for some more hit damage and to increase the size. Then for Reaper form, we got 2 more points, 1 point into Reaper's Curse, and then when we are low life, we'll have even more hit damage. We'll have increased damage while at that low life. That's if you're at 35% or lower. 2 more points for Death Seal, 1 point in the Quick and the Dead for haste whenever it releases, so we can move faster out of trouble until we're waiting for it to come off cooldown. And we're going to start putting points into Doom Call so that we'll gain damned stacks per second, and Death Wave does more damage per stack of damned that we have. Now, right here, we're only going to get so many stacks, but when we hit 78 and we put on the Marina staff, we can actually get a stack of damned put on us every time that we use a spell. So every time we manually cast Hungering Souls or some other spell, you'll be able to get lots of stacks, which allows the Death Seal to hit for some crazy, crazy damage. Then we got 3 more points for Aura of Decay. We're going to put 1 point in Loathing. And then we're going to start building into Vulnerability so that it reduces the enemy's poison resist. But this is to reduce the... No, that's not the one we want. We're not doing that. We're doing straight up necrotic. I thought you can convert it to necrotic. Okay. Then we're going to do 2 points into just increase area for Plague Rat to increase the area that we apply that armor shred, so we're doing more damage to the enemy. Then for passives, we've got 10 more points. 1 point will go in Ageless Ascetic for that move speed, leech, and the cast speed. 5 points into Soul Maul so that we leech even more of the damage we do. And then 4 points into Unclosing Wounds for even more increased damage, which is just going to make our damage get even more insanely high. And then for our inventory, the only unique we have at this point is the Bastion of Honor. We do have some exalted items. We got some mana regen on one ring, we got some spell damage on the other, and then we have some life on our relic. We're going to continue to look for even more health, get our elemental resist, all of our resistances capped, the critical strike avoidance, and then of course the endurance as well. But we really want to stack as much life as possible at this point, because when you're in that Reaper form, you're leeching so much. It's just nice to have a big pool to be able to take big hits and leech it all back right away. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 75. Alright, Travelers, we are now level 75. Time for the final update of the leveling guide. We've got about 1900 health. We got some elemental resist, fire's pretty high, about half our physical, cap necrotic, and half our void, and still working on getting some poison. We haven't really needed it, and even with the reduced armor that we have from the armor shred from Decryptify in the Aura of Decay skill, we've been doing alright. We haven't had too many issues with survivability. Occasionally, if you run into too many elemental monsters, it can get really rough, but it's been 5 outside of that. we still have the Bastion of Honor on for that 100% block chance, and we take the reduced damage from that. For defense, we did cap our critical strike avoidance. We're working on getting the endurance, and for damage, we're sitting at about 400% necrotic damage as well as 300% spell damage. For skills, we got one more point for Summon Skeleton. Gonna start building into the memory catcher so we have global increased spell damage when one of our skeletons have died recently. For Hungering Souls, we got one more point. We're going to continue to build into the Great Soul for more hit damage. For Reaper Form, we're going to continue to build into the Death's Door for more damage when we're at low life. For Death Seal, we got one more point going into Doom Call. Eventually, later in the endgame version, we will be taking out of the Hungering Souls to get more Doom damage and have more waves, just so it's happening more often, just because it's going to be our main source of damage. But we'll do an endgame build guide on that later. And for Aura of Decay, we got one more point. We're going to continue to build into the area to affect more enemies with that Armor Shred. For passives, we got 10 points. 5 of them are going in Grasp of Fate for 60% increased necrotic damage, and 5 are going into Deathbringer for that critical strike chance, as well as some cast speed so we can fire off more Hungering Souls. And then for items, got a couple of exalted items. For our boots, we went with tier 5 critical strike avoidance that had a bunch of int as well. We got a bunch of health on the relic, a bunch of health on a ring. So the one unique is still the Bastion of Honor. We're going to get our idol slots soon. We're basically going to be running as much health as we can on the idol slots, our healing effectiveness, so that Aura of Decay will heal us for more. And then for the weapon, we're using a exalted increased necrotic damage Profane Wand until we unlock the level 78 so we can wear Marina's one-handed wand, which will do a lot more necrotic damage for us, as well as apply damned every time we cast the spell so that death wave will hit much harder. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys in the next one, and have a good one.